Hey guys, what's up? It's me, the Media Raptor, and I'll be with you in a second. Okay, that's better. So I'm back with another movie review for you guys. Tonight, I'm going to take a look at a 1995 horror dark comedy. That movie is Demon Knight, otherwise known as Tales from the Crypt presents Demon Knight. Water. It's really hot these days. So, if you guys don't know, this movie is set in the same world. It was made during the television run of the popular TV show Tales from the Crypt. And I've mentioned it a few times before, as it is easily one of my favorite TV shows, up there with stuff like Ash vs. Evil Dead, Rick and Morty, and other such great shows. But there were 3 movies made from Tales from the Crypt, technically 5. Excuse me. There was Tales from the Crypt, Vault of Horror, or Beyond Tales from the Crypt. But those were long before the movie. Like, those were made in the 70s. This thing was made in 1995. And does it live up to all the worthiness of what Tales from the Crypt once gave us? Oh yeah. It's an amazing movie. Really, really amazing. Perhaps one of the strongest factors of this whole movie comes from what's one of the most important factors of the entire movie, the writing. See, it says right there on the cover, Demon Knight. And actually, while I'm showing you the cover, this is something I like about these Scream Factory Blu-rays. Or just Shout Factory Blu-rays in general. See that? That is how the case originally came, with this cover as the slipcover. But they actually give you, it's a double-sided print, and that was the theatrical poster. So you can actually change the slipcover to look, well, you can change the cover of the Blu-ray case to look to a certain way, which I think is really cool. But anyhow, the writing? Well, first off, it's Tales from the Crypt, so it's a very dark humor style, and the humor is done really well. I legitimately laughed out loud. But Tales from the Crypt is always well known for its original, creative, and crazy stories. And I mean really crazy stories. There were some Tales from the Crypt episodes that were so out there, but you know what? They were still awesome. So, what's the plot of Demon Knight? Well, let me read you the back. A mysterious drifter known as Breaker possesses the last of 7 ancient keys that hold the power to stop the forces of darkness and protect all of humanity from evil. Right there, that enough made me want to watch this movie, because that just sounded awesome. Even if it wasn't Tales from the Crypt, I would still want to watch a movie that had those 2 sentences of an explanation. But it gets better. But the human race is safe only so long as Breaker can evade the demonic Collector, who has gathered 6 of the keys. That makes it even cooler. You're giving us who the main character is, what he's up to, and frankly, what he's up against. And along the way, well, I don't want to read the whole back, because I don't want to kind of ruin everything, but let me just put this. Let me read this part. So in the obsessive quest for the key, the Collector rallies an army of ghastly cavaliers against Breaker and the inhabitants of a rundown hotel. And here's where this really gets good. Armed with automatic weapons, sacred blood, and sadistic humor. I'm going to not read the rest. If you really want to read it, go look it up. But just that alone should tell you everything you need to know about this movie. The characters, they're not exactly the deepest characters ever. Aside from Breaker, who is an awesome character, he's a really cool idea of a character who has been around for so long, and his whole purpose in life is to guard this key, which has the blood of someone sacred, which goes far back, even so far back that originally it had the blood of Jesus, which is a really cool idea. And essentially, he has to protect this key from the Collector getting to it, because if they collect all 7 keys, hell will be able to come onto Earth. That does kind of raise the question, though, if hell can't get onto Earth, without the 7 keys. 1, how did the Collector get onto Earth? And 2, how is he able to summon his little demon things? But you know what? It's Tales from the Crypt. You're not supposed to think about that. If you're thinking about that too much, just focus on the fact that I'm wearing a shirt with a bear longboarding. So, yeah. So, the premise alone is awesome. This whole cat and mouse game of survival with the entire human race in the balance just sounds like a fascinating story. But it gets better than that. See, they also begin coming up with really unique ideas of how you deal with demons. You know, we've all heard this stuff like, oh, Christ can repel them, and, well, I'm not trying to sound too sarcastic about my own faith, but we have the traditional movie tropes. But with this, we have stuff like, well, the demons can't actually touch you if you're holding this key, or if you mark the doors with the blood, like with the holy blood, and the windows, they can't enter. Which, to me at least, is a really clever reference to a certain story about a certain angel of death in a certain town called Egypt. And if you know what I'm talking about, you know what I'm talking about, and if you don't, it's a faith thing. So all that's really cool, and, well, the whole story itself is really interesting aside from the ending. The ending kinda sucks. The ending's great, don't get me wrong. It's just, Tales from the Crypt never continued a story. All their episodes, none of them share any canon to each other. Okay, that's kinda how the series worked, is no 2 episodes were connected. The only connecting things were the theme song, and of course the Crypt Keeper, who I'll get to in a second. See, this thing ends on an awesome sequel hook, one which I would have loved to have seen. But from what I've heard, they didn't make a sequel to Demon Knight, they made Bordello of Blood. I haven't seen that movie, and I would like to, actually. I might do a reaction and review, and I'll cover that when I get to the end. But it really leaves you wanting more, but the movie kinda doesn't give you that. And it's not the movie's fault, it's just, I really wish there was another one of these. Again, I've said this before, but maybe with the new Tales from the Crypt coming up, we might get a sequel to Demon Knight in some way. So, 2 Blu-rays I have are actually quite similar to each other. I have Demon Knight, and I have Creepshow. You know what they have in common? They're horror anthologies. And you know what an anthology film needs to make it interesting? Some sort of framing device. While Creepshow has a total of, I believe, 4 stories, this only has 1. And what is at the beginning and the end of this story? Well, nothing more than our old friend the Crypt Keeper himself. And let me just say, it is ridiculously funny what he does. But then again, it's the Crypt Keeper. I would be surprised if it wasn't funny. Hey, sorry about that, camera died. So, as I was saying, the Crypt Keeper himself is hilarious, the puns are bad, and the framing story is actually pretty creative. But the framing story is also the one problem I have with the writing. And this kinda has to also do with editing. If you know the show, each episode begins with him reading a book. This, he's making a movie, and apparently the movie he's making is the movie we watch, even though the movie we watch is nothing like the movie he was making. So that doesn't make a lot of sense. If perhaps he put it in another VHS and said, oh look, kiddies, here was my first film, or something like that, that would work. And also the whole, I call this one, instead of the title here, like whenever he opens the story before it actually begins, he doesn't even say that. Like he just says, have a look, shall we? And as it starts, he says, I call this one Demon Knight. Yeah, I don't do a great Crypt Keeper impression. Anyhow. So, yeah. That's really my only problem. So just on the cover, Billy Zane and William Sadler are in this movie. Do you guys know who Billy Zane and William Sadler are? If you don't, William Sadler was in Iron Man 3, and Billy Zane was in Titanic. Yeah, that's what I love about this series, is big-name actors, a lot of them, like even like Daniel Craig, even Whoopi Goldberg's been on the show. Quite a number of nowadays very big, popular actors were on this show at one point or another because, well, they weren't big back then. But who else? We have Jada Pinkett Smith. who was in Gotham. We have Ernest Dickinson, who directed Dexter and The Walking Dead. Yeah, the guy who directed The Walking Dead, or at least had some hand in it, and Dexter directed this. Let's see here. Thomas Hayden Church, Spider-Man 3, CCH Pounder? That is a very strange name. Whatever, he was in Orphan and Avatar. Brenda Blake, or Bake, L.A. Confidential, and Dick Miller was in L.A. Confidential. Dick Miller from Gremlins. And Charles Fisher from Zodiac. So, yeah, let me just read this again. We have Gotham, Titanic, Iron Man 3, Orphan, Avatar, The Walking Dead, Spider-Man, Gremlins, Zodiac, and L.A. Confidential as just some of the things that the actors and directors of this movie went on to work in. And they all do a great job. Like, I'm not sure what you were expecting me to build up to something and then say, and they all sucked. No, actually, all the actors in here do a really good job. They do a cheesy yet believable performance. And that's really the best way for me to put it. And that's about all I'm going to say, because, you know, a few actors, I found them kind of annoying, but thankfully they were killed relatively quickly in the story. But that also has to do with the characters. Like I said, they're not the deepest characters, and some of them are kind of annoying, and they're the kind of characters in a horror movie that are there specifically for you to hate until they die. Effects? Great effects, okay? The puppetry on the little, I don't know if the camera will be clear enough or not, but let's try this. See the little demon guys right here? Those are costumes and puppets, and they look great. The little bits of CG for, like, the lightning effects and stuff like that looks pretty good. The blood and the practical effects look amazing. And this is also the only time, I believe, when we ever see the Crypt Keeper full body. There's been episodes where we've seen legs, and then we've seen the top half, or we've mainly just seen the top half, but in this, we actually see him walking around. Which, again, is pretty cool. Not sure if it was a puppet or a costume, but it still looked pretty cool, nonetheless. And frankly, the puppet parts, you could tell when they were using a puppet, looks amazing. And yeah, it's a little cheap by today's standards, but, well, what do you expect? It was made from 1995, and it's this. You can't expect amazing things. Either way, I still think the film stands up rather highly, and I can highly recommend it. In fact, I'm giving this movie 3.5 Raptor Claws out of 4. It is a solid horror movie, a solid comedy, a solid thriller, and is very much worth the purchase if you are a fan of this series. Now, that's the one other problem I had with this. This and the other movie, the other Tales from the Crypt film that's on Blu-ray, is $30. Normally, I wouldn't have a problem with that, but it's just the Blu-ray. Now, granted, for this movie, I don't feel ripped off at all. In fact, I really wish I had bought this sooner. But if you could find it used or on sale somewhere, in fact, if Scream Factory would maybe start pricing their films a little bit better, I'd buy a lot more from them. So $30 is a bit much to ask for this. But once you get it, there's a really good chance you'll be happy with it. So, yeah, that's all I got to say, guys. And until next time, this is the Meteor Raptor saying keep cool, and I will see you guys around. Later.